All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We especially want to thank the Waterloo Public Library and Renison University College for giving us this opportunity to share this initiative with the wider community. As you heard, I'm Christine Gillies, and Bethany, Dixon, and I are English language instructors at Renison University College, which is affiliated with the University of Waterloo. Bethany and I are also coordinators of the Getaway Family program, and we also have been hosts in the program ourselves. Thank you. So then, if we can go to the next slide, that would be great, Nancy. As we begin tonight, I just want to share some numbers with you that you may not be aware of. According to a Global Affairs Canada report that was done in 2019, Canada's hosting approximately 500,000 international students. The majority of those are post-secondary, so they're in university and college. These students contribute like $21 billion to our economy each year. These numbers will likely continue to rise, and so we feel like a program like this is more important than ever to support the students. The Getaway Family program has been running for nearly 2 years. Tonight we want to share with you the purpose of the program, some of the key features of the program, and also some opportunities if you're interested at any point in getting involved. Shortly, you'll hear from some participants in our program through a panel of questions. And then towards the end, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. As Nancy said, the question and answer little button in the bottom is the place that you can enter questions, and you can do that throughout the presentation, but we'll take them and answer them for you at the end. Okay, so next slide. So this program connects our international students with families in the community. So our students in the English Language Institute are in a bridging program, which helps prepare them for full studies at the University of Waterloo. So while with us at Renison, we offer the Getaway Family program to help connect them with families in the local community. The students you're going to hear from today are actually alumni of this bridging program, and they're in their full-time studies. It's worth noting that the program has now changed. In the past, we offered it to alumni of our program, but we've moved that to offer it to current students as they study within our program. So that's why the ones you hear tonight are alumni. I really want to point out to you something that's unique about this program, and that it's non-residential. So that's different than homestay family programs that you may have heard of in the past. The students do not live with the families. So before we go on to any more information, we kind of wanted to see who's in the audience tonight by way of a poll. So if you wouldn't mind participating in this poll, it would just give us a better idea about who's in our audience tonight. Great, the answers are coming in. We'll just give a minute for those who want to participate so they can. Great, so I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. So we can see from the results that there's a variety of experiences from people in the audience. And, I think that you might have a really good understanding then of the value of a program like this if you lived outside your country, if you've sent your children to another country to study or to travel. And then you also might be here because you think it sounds interesting, but you also want to learn a little bit more about it. So we're really happy for all of that. I'm going to do my best here to stop this. Okay, great. All right, I'm ready to move on, Nancy. Thanks very much. We really want to share this photo with you. It's a photo that was taken last fall at an ice cream social that we hosted to connect families and students, or to reconnect those who had met in the past. This family were alumni of the University of Waterloo, and they were showing our student how the campus had changed since they attended, which of course is huge changes. And then after the ice cream social, they had planned to go on a walking tour of the campus. Great, thank you. We go to the next slide. Thanks, Nancy. So what we want to do is provide, I guess, share with you some key features of the program so you understand what's involved, I guess. The program provides structure to facilitate interactions. Studies have shown repeatedly that connections and friendships don't just happen when international students travel and study abroad. Both domestic and international students report difficulty in initiating and maintaining friendships. So structure provides a pretense for meeting and interacting so participants can take time and really get to know each other. The program also matches students in pairs or small groups for the student's sense of comfort and security. Go to the next slide. The program is designed to be really flexible. So students and families are matched based on common interests and also based on the time commitment both parties have. So you could spend as little as 2 sort of visits an academic term together, or if both parties are interested, you could have more regular and more frequent visits. There's no fee at all to join. And the idea would be that the activities that are planned would be low cost and would provide some engagement in the community. Another nice thing about this is it gives our students an opportunity to do things off campus, which they might not always necessarily do. And the next slide. The program provides a really unique opportunity for domestic families, as well as the students, to expand their intercultural competence. It's an opportunity to hear about similarities and differences in cultures, hear about like current events that are going on in the world, but from different perspectives, and also to gain just a new understanding of the world. Another benefit we've heard from students is it's a great opportunity to practice their spontaneous listening and spontaneous speaking. Go next slide. Thanks. There's a few other benefits that Bethany and I both wanted to comment on because we've also participated as families. The photo you see on the slide here, it might be familiar to you. It's from the Gray Silos Walter Bean Trail. And I use this very regularly for biking and for walking. And it's a beautiful place, no doubt. But sometimes when you go somewhere a lot, you sort of get complacent about it and you sort of forget kind of how amazing it is. So when we took a student there for a walk, it really helped me see it with new appreciation. And I feel like being involved in a program like this gives me additional motivation to engage in my community and also to see it with new perspective and new appreciation. Bethany, did you want to add something in here?
Sure. So I have also very much enjoyed being a host as well as one of the facilitators of this program. And for me, my experience with this meaningful perspective on places has been a little bit different from Christine's and many others here because I am also fairly new to Canada. I moved here just under 5 years ago. So I have also been learning to know these places and feel belonging here. And I've found it very useful and meaningful to actually share it with the students, even though it isn't a place that I would have originally called home. But now I've made all these amazing memories and added a lot of meaning for myself in Canada by sharing it with them and discovering things together. So I've really enjoyed that side of it too. And I just wanted to mention that to say that it doesn't have to be something that we know well yet. It can also be something that we discover together. And another piece that I think Christine definitely touched on a few slides ago too is that idea of increasing global awareness. And I wanted to highlight that again too, because I think it's important that we are always open to learning, even if we already know quite a bit about things that are going on in other places. So I also grew up in several different countries and felt that I had a pretty good sense of what was going on in several areas, but it has just been completely different to have very constant connections with people from other places, especially during COVID, to be hearing from my students who are from Ecuador and Panama about where their countries are with the situation of COVID and how they're doing, and some of them going home, some of them staying here. It's just been a really nice way to stay involved. So yeah, thanks. And Christine, I will pass it back to you.
Awesome, Bethany. Thanks so much, and so true. Yeah, we could go to the next slide. Here, we really wanted to show you what a current representation is of the students and the families that are involved right now as participants. I hope I don't miss any, but you can see that we have participants from Vietnam, Turkey, Panama, Ecuador, Togo, England, and China. And given this, it's such a unique opportunity for families to learn in a really authentic way about other places in the world. And we really, really believe that both sides benefit a lot. Go to the next one. We want to show you this. This is a little more information from that report that I mentioned earlier. And we think that the goals of our program closely align with the Government of Canada's goals for attracting international students to study in Canada. We think that the program assists international students in becoming part of like wider social networks, like off campus. And hopefully that will contribute to a persistence in their relationship in their studies, and then in the community, and then like in the future, then improve the chances that these students will want to stay in Canada after graduation if they really feel that the community is theirs as well. We'll go to the next slide. So I just wanted to explain just a small bit here before I wrap up, but there's a lot of research on how international students adapt to their host countries and an institution. But something that's often missing from these studies is how the host culture or the domestic students and domestic communities are involved in improving the experience of these international students and their adaptation. A goal of colleges and universities in Canada has been to internationalize the campuses for our domestic students. And one of the ways that they do this is to market our campuses and market educational opportunities to international students so that Canadian students have contact with other cultures and perspectives. But as I mentioned earlier, these interactions and relationships, they don't just form automatically. So through this program, there's a great opportunity for the community to get to know these students and provide them with a connection to a place that they may someday call their own community. You can go to the next slide, Nancy, thanks. I'm almost done. I want to summarize for you sort of some of the outcomes or goals that we're hoping for in this program. The bottom line for us is that we want these students to feel supported and connected. They've left their countries and their families and their friends and their homes, and they've come to a place that's new, right? New language, new culture, new education system. So our personal goal, I guess, is to support them and help them feel connected so they have academic and personal success. In the long term, the hope is that they'll develop confidence, right? With these sort of structured interactions and relationships. And they start out that way, but as they go along, we hope they'll develop confidence in initiating their own connections in the community. And finally, I'll just say it one more time, that there's great opportunities for intercultural competence for both the students and the families. All right, next slide, please. So now we're going to move to the panel where Bethany Dixon will ask participants questions about their experience in the Getaway Family Program.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Christine. And Nancy, I think we can stop sharing that screen if that's all right. Thank you. Okay, so definitely the highlight of what we're sharing with you today is getting to hear directly from the panelists who have very kindly agreed to join us. We are lucky to have 3 students and 1 family representative here. Janice Long has been part of the program ever since we started our pilot program in 2019, and she'll tell you a bit more about that. And then Nuve, Andrea, and Khan have also been part of the program for a lot of the time that it's been running, and some of them from the beginning. So without further ado, I'm going to invite them to also introduce themselves. But before I do that, Nancy, would it be possible to change to, I don't know if we're still spotlighting Christine, but just so that the participants can be seen a little better? At least on my screen, I'm still seeing mostly Christine.
So if we can ask the panelists to unmute,
Sure.
they'll be able to come onto the screen.
Okay, sounds good. Excellent. So starting with Janice, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us why you decided to join the program?
Absolutely. So yeah, my name is Janice Long, and I grew up in Waterloo. I was a student at UW, and although I haven't lived my full life in Waterloo, for most of the time that when I have lived here, I was always felt that connection to the university, partly because my family attended a faith community there. So additionally, I was married there, and my kids were baptized there, and we still do attend there. So I feel like have been on campus lots as a student and beyond. My son is a student there now, but the student community is very transient. So although I have lots of reason to be on there, it's not that easy to get to know individual students. So my husband and I have traveled a lot, and we've always valued personal connections when we're traveling. To get to meet locals and stay with locals is just so helpful and makes such a difference on your travels. So when Christine approached me with the idea of the Getaway program, it was an easy yes. There was no hesitation. And especially the timing was great. My oldest 2 children had just moved out, and it seemed like a great activity for my youngest son and my husband and I to do together. And we could meet new people, learn new things about other countries, and additionally, my son was really interested in learning Spanish, so that was an extra bonus that he could get to practice his Spanish. So the experience with Getaway has been great. It's been a good challenge to kind of come up with activities to do, but it certainly doesn't have to be complicated. You want to go for something of broad interest and little expense, but honestly, the most common and easy favorite activity is just going for a walk, because you end up chatting. You don't have to be doing something a lot. And now in the pandemic, we have done that a couple times because it's just great to be outside. But even when we were locked right down in the pandemic, just getting online and having a chat, or even trying some online board games has been fun too. So other things we've done is including going for a walk, try geocaching, going tobogganing, but even going for concerts, or attending a church program, or board games, swimming, watching sports, strawberry picking have all been some examples of things we've done together. So yeah, so that's me and kind of my experience so far in the Getaway program.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Janice. And for the students, if we could start with Andrea, and then we'll just go alphabetically for this first question, that would be great.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea. I am from Ecuador, and I am in my 2A nanotechnology engineering term. I came to Canada in 2018, and I was in the BASE program, which is the English program for international students. And there's where I met Bethany and Christine. So after I finished the program, they approached me with this awesome experience or idea of joining the Getaway Family program. And during my first year, like in residence, I was mostly like indoors, like in residence or going to the different buildings, but I didn't got like the chance to like go outside to the park or like to different spots in Waterloo. So like having this opportunity to be engaged with a family that like knows the area and knows how like how a family enjoys like a weekend, that's been great. And in general, in overall, I had so much fun and it's been a great experience.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Go ahead, Khan.
Hi everyone, my name is Khan and I'm from Vietnam and I'm studying at the Accounting and Financial Management program at University of Waterloo. So I actually came to Canada around in high school in grade 11, but I have had a chance to really get to know the Canadian culture. So when I was in my first year at university, I met Christine through the iBase program as well, and she introduced me to this program. And I thought to myself, you know, what's the best way to learn about the Canadian culture and learn about like, you know, the culture of the place that I'm studying and working at, and still like connect through a local family. So far my experience has been really exciting, and I'm just look forward to future events.
Thanks so much, Khan. And Nuve.
Hi everyone, my name is Nube, as Bethany just said, and the reasons why I joined the also as Andrea, I'm in nanotechnology engineering. This is my second year. And the reasons why I joined the Getaway Family program are a bit different from Andrea's and Ken's. So the first year I got here, I was not able to go back home for Christmas, and it was around 8 months that I haven't seen my family, so I was feeling very homesick. And when Christine approached me with the idea of the Getaway Family program, it was just great because it was a chance to be in that familiar environment again and just do simple activities and relax. And yeah, it's been great ever since I joined.
Thank you so much. And I know you're going to have a chance with my many questions to share more about your experience. So for the remainder of all the questions, I won't be telling you who to go first. I'll just ask the question and let you take it as you want. So starting first with anybody who wants, I would like to hear what is something that you've done or maybe learned through this program that you don't think you would have otherwise. That could be cultural or any kind of experience or anything you want to talk about. So something you think you might not have experienced without being part of the Getaway program.
I can go first. So there was this one time when my Getaway Family program invited me over Christmas dinner, and I figured because they all were very tall and I'm short, I would wear high heels, and I did. But once I got to their houses, they asked me to take my shoes off, and I was shocked because in Ecuador you wouldn't normally ask someone to take their shoes off, and that's something that I haven't even seen in movies. So it just surprised me, and I don't think I would have learned that was something you do here in Canada unless I wasn't invited to a Canadian family house.
I'll talk next. So the first students that we were having over to our house for a meal, it was suggested that I serve halal food. And that was a new experience for me. I had to do some research and find out about what that meant in terms of what was okay to serve and not. And it turns out I think I went overboard because they actually did not follow it quite as strictly as what I had prepared, but that was okay. So it was just a great experience to learn about what exactly it means to eat halal.
I can go next. So one of the experiences I really remember was last Christmas. So my sister came to visit me from Ecuador, and like in Ecuador, you usually spend like this holiday like going to the church and then going back home and having like a nice dinner and then spending time like watching a movie or something. But like here with the Getaway Family that like helped me during the Christmas, they invited us to baking cookies, which was, I know that here kids do that a lot, but actually that was the first time for me and my sister to actually bake cookies and decorate them. And we were like so excited, like as little kiddos, just doing that activity. And after that, like we played board games and we had some like dinner. And something that like I wasn't expecting was to have some carolers at the door. And like that was something I just saw in movies that happened, and like I was so happy to share that with the family and also with my sister, because it was I cannot like if I was just a student without being in the program, I will be just like going to the mall or like doing some student stuff, but this was more familiar and more like connected to the Canadian culture. Yeah.
So for me is it would be board games, because board games is not that common in Vietnam. I think we probably will only know like Monopoly, but other than that, we don't really have any board games. So when I went to Janice's house for dinner, and after that we played board games like for the first time for me. And I think it was a very fun experience, and it helped me not just know how to play like a certain game, but to, you know, ask questions or like be open to trying new things and be open to just telling my friends that I actually don't know this game. Can you guys explain to me? So I think that is something that I've learned. Like I would have learned otherwise, to be, you know, to just be confident to initiate conversations and to just join games.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Khan, and everyone for sharing. So my next question is about, you've talked about some of the things that you really liked or that were interesting experiences. I'd like to also hear about any challenges that you have experienced, and that could be related to, again, cultural differences or any other area that you might want to talk about in relation to challenges.
I can go first on that one. So probably the biggest challenge for me was just figuring out communication. I tend to use email, and that is partially just, you know, what I grew up with and what I use for my work. So, but I've discovered that students don't necessarily respond to email. They don't necessarily check their email that frequently. So then I had to, it just takes some talking about and figuring out what social media platform do we all can we all get on board with using. So certainly, you know, texting is pretty good, but if you want to do a group thing, most recently we found WhatsApp, and surprisingly, you know, I get replies within a couple of hours unless they're sleeping, which is great. So definitely, yeah, figuring out that communication is one piece that it just takes some time to work out and figure out.
I can go. Something that I found challenging at the beginning, it was commuting to places, because as international students, most of us don't have a car, and in my case, I don't even have a bike. So unless my Getaway family would go pick me up, I didn't really have the transportation to get there. That one, and I would also say balancing student life with extracurriculars, because for most university students, life can be very stressful and very packed with assignments, laboratories, a lot of things like that. And sometimes my Getaway family invites me to go to the park or go for a pool day, and I can't join them because I have to do my assignments. So balancing those things, it's also challenging.
Yeah, I will agree with Nove. One of the biggest challenges is like time management to be able to do the activities. And sometimes like even if you're able to make some space and you're scheduled to join the activity, then like you're having so much fun that you lose track of time. And then when you go back, like you get something behind and then you need to catch up during the week. So that will be kind of the challenge. And also for me, sometimes like being in this familiar environment is kind of nostalgic because it reminds me of like what I have in Ecuador, like my parents, my sister, and it can be like managing these emotions can be also challenging as well.
Yeah, I agree with what Nube and Andrea just mentioned. I feel like the biggest challenge would be time management. So for example, earlier this year around January, I was really busy with school and I was really trying to like sort things out like in my like academics. And when Janice invited me to events and things like that, I had to turn down. And a part of me felt kind of guilty and felt bad for like turning down because I know she put efforts into organizing it for us. But like a part of me knew that like I had to do my work as well. So it's really hard to balance it sometimes, but I'm getting better at it.
Thank you so much to all of you. And I wanted to echo what some of you have said, especially related to this pandemic. And again, if any of you want to double dip on any challenges related to the pandemic specifically, feel free. But for me as a host, it's been really hard during the pandemic. As Janice mentioned, walks are great. And so we've tried to do socially distanced things either in a park or walking. But it is hard to know how to stay in touch when you can't necessarily all be in the same bubble, because you know that the families are seeing a few other people maybe, and then the students are seeing a few other people. So it's hard not to be able to do those in-house things, like just having my students over for dinner or whatever. So for me, that's been a big challenge, and my students and I are still kind of working that out. Yeah, so I think that for me has been one of the major things that we're still working on, in addition to some of the things that you mentioned. And that's related also to transportation, that Nuve said, that normally I'd be more than happy to give a ride. But then again, if there's pandemic, should we be in a car together? And if so, how far? And do we wear masks? And how do we do it? So it's been challenging. I don't know if anybody wanted to add anything on that related to that or not. I'll let you just think on it for a second, and if not, I'll ask the next question.
I'll kind of second what you said. Definitely the pandemic has put another light on things and a complication. I've found that, well, people with the pandemic situation either in their work are much more busy or much less busy, and I'm on one of those people that's been just much more busy. I have so much more to do because of how my work has transitioned, and so I've felt bad at times that I have not been offering as many opportunities to the students. Now I know that they've had their own things going on too, but so that definitely has been a challenge in terms of figuring that stuff out. But you know, as has come up, and I have to remind myself, it's okay even to just kind of put it out there on WhatsApp, not that we're going to get together, but hey, how are you guys doing? And I think I've been pleased to know here that they appreciate even just that little connection. So so that's one thing that can help.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else jump in, so I'll go ahead with the next question. So if you were giving advice to anybody else who were maybe thinking of joining as a family or joining as a student, what would you tell them if somebody came to you and asked, you know, should I join, or what should I know about the program? I'd love to hear from each of you what advice you would give or what you would share about the program.
So I can go first on this one. So one of the advice that I would give is to just go out there and just, you know, give it a chance and put yourself out there. I feel like once you take the first step it will get easier. So for example, for me, my first time meeting Janice, I think, yeah, was when I went over to like her place for dinner. And before I went to her place, I was like, you know, I was nervous. I don't know what to do. What if like I don't know, I said something wrong or something like that? And it's just really kind of like out of my daily routine. But after that night, like I felt like there was a connection, and they were they're really nice to me. So it just, everything just like come together eventually. So my advice would just be to give it a chance and see how it goes from there.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I'll say like I agree with Ken, and I'll also encourage everyone to just like join the program. And actually, even like little experiences will be really meaningful for you. And even in the context of the pandemic and COVID, I'll say, and I will say like the little messages that Janice just mentioned can be really like can change you. For example, this summer, like during the pandemic, I was living practically alone because I was renting a place and there was like no roommates that could rent the place. So just having like some board games online that Janice organized was amazing for me. I was like having the chance to practice my English because I wasn't talking to anyone but myself. Like I could talk to friends in my own language, and I could talk to some friends that like in English. But just having this extra like family that can help you like have some connection online, or like right now after the pandemic, or like having these restrictions, but we are still in contact. So I will encourage everyone to just give it a try and be open to experience culture, your culture, to share your culture, to talk about it, because the other families are also going to learn about your culture, and it's going to be like a learning curve for all of us and all of the people involved.
I can hop in here. So I have already tried to recommend the program to a number of friends, and I would certainly recommend anybody who has that little bit of time and is interested in meeting new people and meeting students from different cultures. It's great, and even just to, even if you don't have a lot of time, just to explore what the recommendations are or what they provide is a good starting step. Something that I found Christine and Bethany did a really great job of putting the program together, starting small and then kind of growing it little bit by little bit. They started with a really great just resource list for families to start with, and suggested list of activities and ideas about things. But also something that came out of it was a book that Christine had recommended, or I think it may have even come from Bethany, I'm not sure, that Foreign to Familiar. And it's by Sarah Lanier, and it was just a fantastic book. It's short and very just an easy read, but it really, I was reading it, and I've traveled quite a lot and have don't hesitate to meet new people, but there were so many moments that were just kind of aha moments as I was reading the book that I ended up making my family read it. I mean, recommending, of course, my family to read it, and passing it on to other extended family members and friends, because it's just a good kind of book to give you ideas about, how different cultures mixing, how things come up that you hadn't really thought about before. So it opens your eyes in so many ways. Reading the book and just generally the program to get to meet new people is just eye-opening, which is always a good thing in life.
And I guess I'll go last. I would just say to other students who think they don't have time for these type of activities, I would very much, as Ken and Andrea, encourage them to join the program, because you might think that doing these simple activities like going for strawberry picking or for a walk in the park is not something important or valuable. But at least in my personal experience, I found it very, very valuable for in many aspects, especially in the academic one, because it's good for us to have that space to relax, and it's also a safe place to ask questions and get your mind off academic activities. So definitely, yeah, encourage you to join and make some time. You might think you don't have it, but trust me, you do. I was that one person who thought didn't have time for anything other than studying.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we really, really appreciate you joining, and thank you, Janice, for mentioning the book. I know somebody's asking for the name. We are going to have a slide later where we actually show you the whole name of the book and what it looks like so that you can find it. So we will come back to that resource. And we're also going to have a lot of the rest of our time for you to ask more questions of the panelists. So I know they kind of touched on some things you might want to hear more about, like their favorite activities or something else. So feel free shortly to put some questions for them in the chat, and we will have a chance for them to answer or for Christine and me to answer. So thank you guys so much for joining us, for being part of this program. I know I see at least one other participant of the program in our attendees as well. So definitely anyone here who wants to jump in, feel free if you've been part of it. But for just a little bit, I am going to wrap up a little bit with some research information, and then we'll come back to the opportunity for more discussion and more sharing. So thank you everyone once again. And let's see, Nancy, I'll give a try, see if I am able to share, and if not, okay. For the panelists, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Because I can see you. You can see it? Okay, perfect. So let me just make this full screen. Okay, so talking related to what the panelists have just been sharing, and also to the research that has been done, we want to connect this a little bit to academic research on programs like this. We want to talk about a few emerging themes, both in the literature and from what our participants have told us. So 3 of the main themes that have come up, both in the research that has interviewed students and in the feedback we've gotten from students, is the idea of social and community connections, mental wellness, and social capital. I apologize, by the way, for my computer making a little bit of noise in the background with the fan. Hopefully you can still hear me. So the idea of social and community connections, I believe you have pretty much heard that from our panelists. They have really captured that well. That it gives some social connections outside of friends who you would see already in university, and community connections with both the people but also the places in the community. So I know Andrea mentioned that she might have been going to the mall, for example, to show her sister around, but it may not be so common that you would get to go on a hike to a certain place or to go strawberry picking if you didn't go with a family. So one of the really nice things is just getting more comfortable with certain places in the community, whether that's somebody's home or somewhere else. A very interesting statistic that is related to this is that in the last decade, there was a study looking at how long it takes for somebody who is a newcomer to Canada to be invited into the home of a Canadian or somebody who's lived here for a long time. And the average was 7 years. I have not actually put that citation on here because it just came to my mind as I was talking about this, but I can provide that for you. So often it can be a long time before people get the chance to actually go into a Canadian home or get, again, involved in some of the things that are so established. So this can be a really great way, both place and people connections. Mental wellness is also another big piece. I was a student in a Getaway Family program as a high school student and a university student, and that was what inspired this program, and what inspired the name of the program was from my high school program. And I did find definitely that it helped a lot with mental wellness to get off campus and to be talking to people who had different problems from me and all my friends. So at the time, all of us were the same age, taking the same classes or similar classes. We were all stressed about the same exams. And it was great to get off campus and just talk to somebody who was in the workplace, or to kids who were dealing with their own kid experiences, or even pets. We've had a lot of students say they really love getting to be with pets, because often when you're a student, you don't have the opportunity to have your own pet. So all of that can really contribute to mental wellness, and that has been mentioned in the literature, as well as the experiences that our students have shared with us, and my experience when I was a student in this program. And then last but not least is also social capital. So if I'm a student and a local student and I have a family here, maybe I have a lot of connections. So people could say, oh, I heard you're looking for a co-op. Let me, put you in touch with this person to just talk about ideas or something like that. But if you don't know a lot of people in the community, it's hard to do that. You have a lot of resources on the university campus, but it's not as common to be able to just reach out. And so, while of course families are not in charge of students' own success or their job finding, they still can be people to just talk about things with, or say, oh, did you consider this idea? So the social capital can also be an interesting piece. And that has also come up in the literature as well. So then for families, two of the big things that we've already touched on are global awareness as well as intercultural connections. So Janice mentioned the opportunity to sometimes practice learning a new language, where Janice's son was working on Spanish and has practiced that with several of the students. That can be a really nice thing, learning a bit of a new language, or again, as Janice mentioned, different types of food, or just any other types of little practices, like Nua said, do we take our shoes off or do we not? How do we play these board games? So that's for the students, but it's also for the families. Like, okay, is this okay? How do you feel about this? For me, one of the big things is communication too. Like when I ask, do you want to come? And somebody says no, does that really mean no? Or does it mean it's a culturally polite thing to say no, and then I need to ask again? So all of these things are something that, again, the families can learn and really grow from, as well as the students. And also just fun. It is so much fun spending time together. And I know this is not listed here, but I think some of these connections, even though our current program only runs for current students, it's really nice to stay in touch with people later. And it really builds wonderful relationships that do keep going. So those are some of the themes that we just kind of wanted to crystallize and show that they're coming up both in the literature and from the stories that you're hearing from our panelists. So our next steps, we touched a little bit on this. Our next main step right now is maintaining support virtually during a pandemic. So we've already mentioned that is pretty tough, especially because now with our current students, a lot of them are not even here. So they would be meeting somebody, just like they're meeting their instructors for the first time, they'd be meeting a family for the first time virtually. It's absolutely possible, and it's actually, in some ways, easier to get involved, because if you want to, you can set this up, you can invite a few different students, you could even invite a friend of yours who wanted to join and do something virtual. But again, that's something that we're working on and thinking of. So in this next section in a little while, when we have Q&A and discussion, we'd love to hear from our audience members too about ideas and insights of what has worked for you in your social circles, or whether you have been hosting anybody or connected with anybody that you think works, that you've had a good experience virtually, or some insight or questions that you have about the virtual program. So besides that, we are also working on growing our base of families. So getting more families involved, because we do have a lot of students who have expressed interest. And so if anybody in the audience is interested, or if you know of somebody else as you hear about this, if somebody comes to mind who might be interested, please do reach out. We have our contact information here, and this will be available for you later as well. So you can email us, and then what we're looking at is building the base to start connections in the winter. So we would be speaking with you, meeting with you. We do try to meet with all families before, of course, so that we can discuss your interest and make the best possible match. And then we would hopefully be starting to invite some new students in who are part of the current English Language Institute programs starting in the winter. So we will be sharing this again, or sharing this in case you're interested in actually reading some of the resources that are available. And some of these are from Canada. We have also found that a lot of US universities have this kind of program. A lot of them call it Friendship Families program, or something related to that. So yeah, a lot of US universities, a lot of some US high schools. I went to a US high school where I went to this program. Anyway, so there is some very interesting research. A lot of this is thanks to Christine, who has done some of this work when she was doing her master's program. So we have 2 pages of references as sources if you're interested. And now to those who were asking about the book, it's called Foreign to Familiar by Sarah Lanier. She has very interesting insights. And just as Janice said, even if you're somebody who has traveled a lot, or lived in a lot of different places, as Janice said, I have done that too. And I still was, just like Janice, reading this and saying, wow, not only does it help me understand other people, but it helped me understand myself. Having grown up for me in what Sarah Lanier calls warm cultures. I grew up outside of North America, and so certain things that I did or ways that I responded to something, I hadn't really registered why I did that or why the cultural reasoning was for that. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. And this is how maybe I could clarify this when somebody here in Canada doesn't really understand why I'm responding this way. So that way too, and the opposite way, where sometimes I was acting in a cold culture way, a little bit more like North America or Europe or places that are colder. And I find it just fascinating. So if you have any more questions, feel free to let us know. This book is available at the Renison Library, actually. This is where Christine and I both found it here, and it's also easily available for purchase on Amazon or other booksellers. Okay, so as I promised, we are going to now move to a time where you can share questions, comments, or insights, and you can direct your questions if you have a certain person you want to ask, or if you want the panelists to all answer something, please feel free to put that in. I'm going to stop my screen sharing for just a minute so you can see us again. And yeah, so I'll give you guys all a chance to just think a little bit and let us know if you have any questions. The Q&A bar should be at the bottom of your screen. So as people think, something that came to mind for me during our discussion was that it would actually be really fun to hear from some of you as the panelists about one of your favorite experiences. And I know that Andrea did share about the caroling, which is such a fun one. And Janice listed off a lot of different things that you've done and related to the walks and stuff. But I'll actually just go for it to share one from me, and Christine, feel free to share on this as well. And then that will give you guys a little bit of a chance because I didn't warn you about this question. But for me, one of my favorite experiences, and you saw a picture of one of my students, Liz, on a slack line. So we were in the park and you put up a little line between 2 trees and you practice walking on it. That has been one of my most favorite things to do with my students. It is totally free, except for owning the slack line, which my family does. You go to any park, choose 2 trees, and then just laugh. We laughed the entire time with people trying to stay on the slack line for more than 2 seconds, learning about that, also maybe throwing a Frisbee while one person's on a slack line, other people can throw a Frisbee. We found that it was something that felt safe to do during the summer pandemic months, especially the slackline part has no connect, like you don't have to be next to anybody. And it was just a fun thing that most people hadn't tried. So for me, it was a reminder that it really doesn't have to be complicated. I don't have to do something really fancy or expensive with students to have a lot of fun. So that's one of the experiences that I've had. And I am seeing some more questions come in, but let's give you guys a chance to share on that, and then we'll get to the next questions.
I can go. There's a few things. First of all, I'd echo that it doesn't have to be complicated at all. One of the things that I've enjoyed most is just having people for meals, for dinner, and talking. And I love to do that, and it has worked really well. So just sort of a regular time when people can come for dinner. Obviously, this is before COVID, but it just, you know, my family, I have 3 bigger kids, so we're always making dinner every single night of the week, and you know, having a few more bodies there actually just makes it really interesting. And then the other thing that I was thinking about, and I'd like to do again soon, is last fall, and I think it was right around Thanksgiving, is just offering a trip to St. Jacob's Market, and students coming, some of you I think were there, but just coming and, you know, letting people see the fresh food that's available, and really kind of understanding that cyclical nature of things, the growing season even in Canada, which is quite different from other places in the world. So that was really nice. Those are mine.
I'll come in here, and definitely listening to you guys, I can say yes, that's definitely some of the favorites that I've come up with as well. But something that hasn't been said, it's kind of come up already, that I do like board games. And so one thing that you know, students will come over and we'll play a board game, or we have figured out how to play some things online. The kind of funnest experience, though, I will just because it was a little bit different. And I think it was Nuve that was playing with my son, playing Bananagrams, and Gabe was playing in Spanish, having to come up with Spanish words, and Nuve was having to come up with English words. So I just loved seeing that, because they'd kind of come up with it on their own, and it was just a great way to kind of take you know, a simple board game and then grow the educational experience and the sharing experience. So yeah, that was a fun one that I'll mention.
Yeah, board games are really fun too. And in my family, board games are not that popular. So that's also one of my favorite activities. But the most favorite one, I would say, it was a street concert that my family, my Getaway family, organized like 3 weeks ago. All social distanced, so there was few people, but I really love music, and they invited this band over their house to play in their garage, and a lot of families were outside in the street, sitting like kind of close to each other but far, 2 feet apart. And yeah, it was super interesting because I haven't been to any other street concert before that one, so that one was my favorite one.
So Andrea and Khan, we don't need to put you on the spot if you don't want to mention. We can come back to you if you want, because there are some other questions in here. Should we go on, or I don't mean to cut you off if you had something to say.
Yeah, I can just quickly chime in. So one of the favorite activities for me would be just go for a walk, because the park is nearby, and it's just really nice to get me like out of my room, especially during the pandemic, to have like a socially distancing walk, to just get me out of my room, because sometimes I would be in my room for like a whole week and just go out once for like groceries. So I think it's a very like fulfilling experience, and it's very meaningful.
Yeah, I guess I can share more in the other questions.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, thank you, Andrea. And I know you had already talked about the caroling, which is an amazing experience. Okay, so we have a couple other questions. Somebody asks, do the students typically meet the families in groups? And yes, I think Christine had briefly mentioned this, but we do put a minimum of 2 students with each family, sometimes 3. And of course, once in a while, a student will just say, hey, can this friend come along? And then it will get bigger. But usually it's a pair of 2 students with 1 family, and sometimes 3 with 1 family. Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. So I think hopefully we just answered the next question, which was saying, it sounds like it can be hard to connect off campus. What favorite experiences have you had in Waterloo region? So I hope that those last answers kind of touched on that, everything from, yeah, parks to board games, to farmers markets. Okay, so Sandra asks, how long do families interact with the student with whom they are paired? So officially, the new setup is that it will be while the student is in the English Language Institute programs. And some of those are 1-term programs. So it would be just from, let's say, during the fall. So from September to December. Or some of them are in there for 2 terms. Families and students can also say, like, I had one student who was paired with me who said they just wanted the last summer, and then they knew they were going to be busy. They didn't want to do it anymore. So it can be also just a choice saying, I know I'll be around, but I only want to do this time. So yeah, so at this time, it's usually either 1 or 2 semesters. In the future, we may be doing some short-term programs, which are even shorter. So like somebody comes for a month or something like that. But generally it's 1 or 2 terms. And then of course, in the case of our first pilot program people, a lot of us have continued being in touch, and now it's going on several years. But that I would say that's an exception. That's not the official part. It's because we have just gotten along really well with students and families and have chosen to continue that. I don't know if Christine, you wanted to add to that at all.
No, that's what I was going to say, what you added at the end. So absolutely, yeah, that's something that has just sort of been organic and has been, you know, part of discussions too. You want to kind of keep the lines of communication open to make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page for whatever the next plans are, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so let's see. Keely, I see a question from you, the next, that says to the students, but I can't see the actual question. So maybe if you wouldn't mind. Oh, unless this the next one. I'm going to go with the next one. This may be your question. So what have been some of your favorite virtual experiences with your host family? What types of virtual experiences would you like to have with a family? So if anybody, I'll let you guys think on that. If you've done anything virtually, what has been your favorite one, or what would you like to have in a virtual program if you were part of a fully virtual one?
I can answer that one. So at the beginning of the pandemic, when we went all quarantine, I remember Janice and the other Getaway family, we all got into a call and we played code names. So there's a version of code names that you can find online, and that was pretty fun. Like I know it's not the same as being in person, but it actually helps you to talk about it and try to think about the clues that you need for the game. And with the pandemic and everything, I found some games, I don't remember specific ones, but they have been making the games online. So if I find, I will try to find the links that I have so far that I can share maybe with Bethany or Christine, and they can put it up. So maybe you have some resource in there. And also I was thinking that can be fun to have a lunch time. So you, for example, at 12 p.m., you schedule with your family, let's get to eat together, and then just eating and talking can be something interesting. Or another idea that I got was cooking. If you're in another country and you get to call your family, maybe you can prepare a dessert that can be familiar, or that can be from that country. Those are some ideas I can think of.
Thanks, Andrea. I don't know if Khan and Nuve want to add anything, or if you feel like Andrea kind of touched on what you would have said.
I felt like Andrea kind of touched on everything that I wanted to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Great job.
Perfect.
I have a little something to say about that virtual program too. I would say that for my situation, from the students I was already connected with, one of the things that we started doing were just phone calls, which is something that we hadn't really done before. Usually it's texting and setting up plans and doing that, but actually having phone calls is great practice, you know, for English listening and speaking and things like that. But I think going forward for a program that starts online, that's not, or virtually, it's not something that you would necessarily do. But, you know, we think having sort of some structure around the first meeting. So again, providing like talking points and maybe activities, some of which Andrea talked about, you could have a plan for your first meetings with students until everybody gets comfortable getting to know each other and things like that. And after that, I expect it would develop more naturally, and what you wanted to do would depend on the people and the personalities involved.
Okay, did anybody else want to add on that one? Nope. Okay, sounds good. So I'll go to the next question. So the next one is related to something we might have touched on a little bit, but not completely cultural. So it says, I wonder if there are any cultural blunders that panelists can share to have an idea of what may happen that may have turned into a learning experience for you. So yeah, any little misunderstandings or cultural surprises that may have turned into a learning experience.
I can start just to give people a little time to think. I think there's been some really small, and I don't know that anything's been incredibly uncomfortable or anything like that, but back to the story that Nube mentioned about her shoes, you know, this idea that when people come into our home, that they're actually sometimes looking for, should they take their shoes off? Should they keep them on? Should they carry their backpack the whole time? Where should they put that? Those kind of things that, you know, they're really small, but they're little things that have been learning for me to know now when they come, that's something that some people might want more instruction about. Also something else, because of the dynamics between students and families and the idea, giving them suggestions about what to call the people in the family. Right? Should they call them by their, you know, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss and those sort of things, or titles? And that's something that a lot of students have been taught to do. And it's not terribly comfortable for them to switch to, say, first names for adults. So that's something to be really clear and to be really, you know, just know that in advance. You can call me whatever you're comfortable with. So just kind of those small things. I feel like I've become a much better communicator because of these small things that kind of build up, can become bigger things. So, you know, just being comfortable having the conversations about things that you think might be misunderstandings. And Bethany mentioned earlier, like if you invite somebody and they say no, or do they say yes, but maybe they don't want to do it but they feel obligated. And, you know, and Khan mentioned that sort of push and pull of guilt and, you know, but responsibility. So just having those really open conversations about, you know, it's okay to say no, or, you know, if you want to come, say yes. If you don't want to come, say no, you know, and that's my comfort level. Again, that's not always comfortable for them. Right? They've got other teaching and raised in different ways, either family or culturally. So just having those open conversations, I think have been good for me, definitely.
I'm just going to jump in here. Sinem, I see that your hand is raised. Did you want to jump in for anything? Because Sinem has been another participant, another family participant in our program.
Where do you see this?
Oh, no, now I guess you put her hand down, so never mind. But again, anybody in the audience who's been part of our program, feel free to raise your hand if you want to be allowed to share. That'd be more than welcome. Yeah. Oh wait, now I think her hand is raised again. Let's see. Sinem, did you want to say anything? You should be able to unmute yourself. Maybe not, but we'll let her come in if she does want to. Okay, sorry. So if anybody else wanted to speak on the cultural blunders.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, now we can.
Perfect, because do you know what? The chat is not available and I'm just typing into this question answer part. Sorry about it.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Sorry, I probably missed what you said.
Okay, so I just want to give an example about this misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the visitors we had, so we are one of the families hosting students. So we are crazy about our pets and we have 4 cats. And at a point, one of our cats was sick. And you know, we were paying a lot of money and so worried and stressed about the cat. And one of our visitors, so one of the students coming from a culture, they don't have pets inside of the home. So pets are all like farm animals, let's say. So, and then he just asked us during the dinner, so why don't you get rid of your cat? And we were like, what? Because we love the cat. We want to stay with it. And then, you know, we talked about it openly. So it was a funny and, you know, a shocking moment. But we talked about it and then, you know, he got it. And it was funny and just a little bit shocking for us, you know, to get rid of our cat. We didn't expect it. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sinem. That is so great to hear your, your insights. Thank you. And yeah, Sinem, by the way, for any of the rest of the questions that come up, please feel free to jump in on your experiences or things that you've enjoyed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, did anybody else want to share on that question?
I can maybe just add that it's been really interesting to hear how students sometimes perceive phrases or even things that get written on, you know, t-shirts or other pieces of clothing that they don't quite get how it was meant, and then to help them learn has been, you know, really not just fascinating, but kind of, I feel like, oh, I'm glad you were able to learn that through us and not through some other way. So yeah, stuff like that is kind of a good kind of interesting cultural thing that comes up.
Yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit more about that, because it was me, the one who had something on her t-shirt. And I was not sure that was part of the cultural blunder, because I'm a, okay. So I bought this swimsuit on sale, and I just read that it said like bribe a squat, but I didn't really thought about it, and it was just cool. I liked the design. And then one day we went with Janice. She was my Getaway Family a few terms ago. And then she saw my swimsuit and was like, no, but where did you get that? And I was like, on Winners, it was on sale, very good price. And then she asked me, like, what do you think it says? And I said, it says bribe squad, like the people who bribes other people, like blackmailing or sort of stuff like that. Like, it was something not good, but it was cool. And then she explained it to me that, and I didn't realize it was not bribe, it was bride squad. So the wedding, the people who goes with this person who's gonna marry. I just, yeah, didn't know that's what it actually meant, and no one else had told me. So, yeah.
At Juve, I wasn't just thinking of you, but that was a good little story.
I was not sure it was part of the culture blunder, because it was just a language thing, right?
Yeah, true.
Okay.
So if anybody else has something you want to jump in on, feel free. I just want to say a little bit more for those who on that question of invitations, yeses, nos, all of that, just to give you a snapshot, actually not from my experience, but from the book that we were just talking about, which again helped me understand ways that I respond and ways that others respond. There is a general pattern, and it's never something that is like true in every single situation, but in a lot of warmer cultures, the idea is if you're asked to do something, ideally, you should say yes, even if you don't really want to, just to preserve the politeness. Whereas in some of the colder cultures, it's a bit more just direct. We're like, do you want to do this? No. So we want to be just a little bit more direct. Or the other way around, if I invite or offer something from in a warmer culture, a lot of places, the polite thing is to first say no, to make sure that they're sure that they want you to do that, and then they're supposed to offer again. So this example of an experience actually comes from the book, but it has shown itself in my experiences too, where the author was talking to a friend of hers who was from a warm culture, from Middle Eastern culture, and the author was talking about this idea of, okay, if you're offered something and you say no, here in North America, we understand, okay, you don't want to come, okay, fine. And the friend from the Middle Eastern country was just utterly shocked. This was a professional, someone very well educated, and had found that they hadn't really made a lot of connections with people in North America where this person was living in the US. Because when she had been invited to things like, do you want to come to this party or whatever, that person would say no at first because that was what was polite, and she was expecting them to offer again if they really meant it. But the hosts or the people inviting were taking it as, oh, okay, you don't want to come, you don't want to spend time with us, fine. And so it had taken years where they were doing this and neither one realized that she actually did want to come, but culturally she was saying no because that was polite. And then the person offering was not offering again because that wasn't what they were expecting to do. And so that was a big light bulb example in the book for me, because I had found that growing up in a warm culture, I often was just saying yes, even though I didn't want to or something like that. Anyway, so learning that, and I've had to talk to my particular students too, saying, you know, the easiest thing, especially when we're far away from each other or texting, is we have to be direct. Like, no matter what we are all coming from, we have to be really clear, saying, you know, I would love to, but I'm just really busy. And then we take that as that's what you really mean. Yeah, or even telling my students, if you want to get together and I haven't reached out, let me know, because you're usually way busier than I am. So why don't you just let me know, hey, I happen to be free, might you be free? And I can tell them no, or I can say, perfect, I'm glad you reached out, let's do something. Because it's also from the family side, after I've reached out a lot of times saying, do you want to do this, do you want to do this? And they're too busy, sometimes I start to get tired of reaching out or just assume, well, they're just really busy, I'll just leave them. So also getting a two-way thing for my particular family and student pair has worked well. Okay, so we just have two more questions that are here for now. For the students, what interesting differences have you experienced between Canadian families and families in your own culture?
So I can answer that one. Some difference that I found was the way like families interact with visitors. I don't know if it's all families in Ecuador, but for example, in my case, when someone comes to the house that is not like a family, like that is a visitor, all the family have to gather like in the table and like talk about, or like just stay there until the visitor like leaves, or like we change activity or something. But like when I have gone, like for example, to Jenny's house, it's like we see Gabe there sometimes, and they go to the room, and then like maybe George, who's Jenny's husband, he can be like around, and I'm like the first time he was like, oh, what should I do? Should I stay here? Should I go? Should I talk to this person? So it's kind of it was kind of confusing, but like after like being with the family, I got used to that like changing environment, and not just like the general idea that I had like sitting in the table and just talking about like how it's been going and having a nice conversation.
one difference that I noticed is when you go over to someone's house and they're making dinner, you're supposed to ask if you could help, and you just stay in the kitchen. Like, even if they say no, you just stay in the kitchen in case they need something. So so I felt like when I went to Jenna's house, I asked her if she needed any help, and she said no. She said like I could go, explore the house or something like that. But like in my head, I was just thinking, oh, I should stay in the kitchen, because it's a polite thing to do, like in my culture. So it's a very interesting difference that I noticed.
There's one big difference that I noticed between my culture and in Canada in general, not only like in families, is that here in Canada, a lot of people say hi to strangers. Like, you just walk in the street and someone would say hi to you, and that's not common in Ecuador unless you actually know that person. I find that very, very kind, very like uplifting, because getting a stranger to say hi to you and smile is, I don't know, it's just like a positive energy that I have seen a lot of people doing, and it's not something we do in Ecuador.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to actually add one thing on there from my past experience as a student, and it's not so much family differences, but more just something related to what Nuve said with the greetings. I remember when I first moved to North America, I moved first to the US and then to Canada. The way that people use "how are you" here as a greeting was very confusing to me, because you're walking towards somebody and they're like, "How are you?" And I'd like start to answer. I'd start to be like, "Yeah, good," like da 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 da. And by then we're already past each other. I'm like, "Oh, okay, you meant hi." And so all of us would laugh about that, because we expected "how are you" to be really like, "So tell me about your life," but really it was, "Hey, how's it going?" and then "Good, bye," as a greeting. So yeah, that was a little thing that I experienced and had to learn, both with families and just in general. Okay, I don't know, Christine, do you want to take this last question about the information that we give, or start on that?
Sure, just let me have a quick look here. Information preparation source. So that's a great question. And what we did last year, that ice cream social that we referred to, before we did the ice cream social where we introduced the families, we actually prepared a newsletter for both the students and for the families. And in that newsletter, we started to do what you're asking. We started to outline a variety of things. So first of all, resources are really important, right? So offering resources, whether they're cross-cultural sort of interaction sort of things, that's something we offered, and if people asked, we could provide that for people. The other thing we offered in that newsletter was sort of a list of resources in the event that you were encountering any difficulty. So what we really wanted people to know, and what we'd like the audience to know too, is that this program wouldn't take the place of any other resources on university campuses. So if the students have a greater need and they need further resources, we had a list of resources and contact information for the families. So if the families felt as though they were dealing with a student who needed more help than just a connection in the community, we provided that some ways to get that help. And we provided a similar thing for the students. So the other thing, we have not run any workshops, but during that ice cream social, we did talk about a few things with families, and we actually had big plans this fall to do another ice cream social, and we were intending on having a little bit more structure around some of the things that we've learned over the past 2 years, right? We've learned a lot as hosts, as administrators, and from the students. So we had big plans to do that this fall. We were hoping to repeat that social beneficial, but that's something that's definitely in our plans. And as we move to a virtual environment, that's something that will be part of the resources. We have a lot of planning going on for that. So I hope that that answers your question. I understand though some hesitation, and I feel that too, or I felt that too, but I feel like as we've gone along, we've been able to deal with a lot of things just on small basis, having little conversations, either with each other's coordinators, with family members, with students. But it's hard to predict everything that could happen. So I guess in some ways you have to be a little bit willing to kind of jump in and see what would happen. But we would be here fully for support in whatever the participants need.
And I just wanted to add one thing. The last part of the question, for those, I know that not everybody can see the question. So the question was just what kind of information or preparation resources are shared with the families? Is there anything along the lines of a workshop or any kind of training or discussion to help them approach potential misunderstandings and being opening to learn about new values and perspectives? One of the things at the end of that question about values and perspectives that we have realized is very important to talk about with both families and students, but actually especially the families, is the family's openness to things like LGBTQ+ students, because that can obviously be so important that you are in a family that is affirming and welcoming. And we have had at least one student specifically say that on their form, because everybody signs up on a form saying usually just their interests, like, you know, I like hiking or whatever, but also anything else they want us to know. And so one student specifically said, I definitely want to be in an affirming atmosphere. And so that was something that was good for us to remember, because we hadn't directly addressed that piece. But yeah, besides just cultural things in general, we're also starting to collect, as Christine said, certain things we've learned, whether it's simple like communication or kind of more deep like those values, that we want to make sure that the family is prepared to being open and supportive. Yeah, so we're kind of compiling that and continually improving what we're providing to families. Okay, well, I realize that we are just about out of time, so I don't know if anybody on the panel had any last burning thing they wanted to add. Okay, yeah, thank you everyone so much. I don't know, Nancy, I'll hand that back over to you to finish up. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone for coming, and to the panelists especially, and Sinem for sharing something as well. It's so valuable to have you guys in the program. And thank you to everyone for listening and asking questions.
So thank you guys for coming out tonight. That was so fantastic and really great information and really so interesting. A lot of things that I actually never thought of myself, like, you know, in terms of the different cultures, and it's such a great program. I just want to thank Renison College for doing this lecture series with us, and we have another one coming up October 20th. So it is Bodies Out of Place, Sex Core, and the Religious Imagination. And that one is live for registration right now. If you wanted to go to our website at wpl.ca, you can see the full description and register through there. And thanks again, Bethany and Christine, and all of our fantastic panelists, and sharing your great stories with us. And have a good night, everyone.